When it comes to growing up as someone who identifies with the idea of being part of the LGBT and exploring my identity, I can't think of many films that quite had the same impact as Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. There were so many others of course that stuck around in my mind: Kinky Boots, To Wong Foo, and Breakfast on Pluto. All these films for a young kid like me who thought I was alone on this journey of self-discovery were huge eye-openers, but the one that really helped me come with terms of the ideas of where I am and who I am, and experiencing stories that are similar to mine, Priscilla really takes the cake. Out of all these films I watched, Priscilla was the main film in the drag/trans genre that had the most appealing message to me. Taught a young confused me that those who love you will always love you, guide you on your journey, and teach you how to be the person you want to become. Because we're all a part of this wild ride that we call life, and we know sometimes life can be an utter drag, and we don't want to experience that alone.
Can you hear the drums, Fernando?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. No more fucking ABBA.
Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is one of the most important films that anyone growing up in the LGBT+ could honestly ask for, yet when I'm trying to look up inspiration, there's not really any videos on YouTube talking about this film. It makes me worry that this film has possibly been forgotten despite having a very popular worldwide successful musical adaptation that's still currently touring to this date. There is so much to love about this fabulously famous Australian road trip, and I just want you to get comfortable, put on your sequin heels, prepare your wigs, and we're about to go on a journey. At the beginning of the story, our main Queen Anthony receives a phone call from his wife, who he has been separated for nearly a decade. She has called him and asked her if he could do her a favour, and in return he can have a fully booked drag show that could last for 4 weeks, a place to stay, and all paid for as well. Anthony of course accepts this deal and asks fellow drag queen Adam. Adam is new to the drag scene and has proven to be a great performer and a great queen companion to Anthony. And Adam's main motive behind accepting this deal is the fact he can fulfill his dream of climbing Kings Canyon in full drag. So of course he would say yes. Anthony then calls a very close friend and retired queen and transgender woman, Bernadette. With everyone ready to go, they buy a bus and name it Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and head out on their few days road trip through the Australian outback. These three, despite being very close friends, couldn't be more different from each other. Bernadette and Adam throughout the runtime of the film have a true love-hate relationship, where on more than one occasion Adam straight out dead names Bernadette, but more on that a little bit later. While on the road trip, Anthony suggests that they take a shortcut that could cut the trip by at least 3 days, but it turns out the bus actually isn't fit for the Australian outback adventure and completely breaks down during the middle of buttfuck nowhere. While out in the outback waiting for help, the queens come across a bunch of travellers who they're able to put a drag show on for, and in return the travellers are then able to get them in touch with a mechanic by the name of Bob. Bob is in a relationship with a woman he met once in the Philippines, and that very quickly falls apart. So of course Bob's life isn't going as he planned. He joins the Queens as the bus itself still isn't able to get through the outback without breaking down every few minutes. But first they would need to stop off at Cooper PD, which the movie makes very clear is known for its tough reputation, and all the Queens and Adam have to be on their best behaviour and not put on a single show. And of course Adam, being a little shit that he is, doesn't listen and decides to do nothing but cause trouble for the town. This ends up being a dark moment in the film where he nearly becomes a rape victim and unfortunately suffers from homophobic abuse. But he is luckily saved by Bernadette and Bob coming to his rescue. This throughout this film's runtime is of course not the only homophobic abuse that they've received during this film, but we will leave that footnote there and come back to it later. They finally make it to the hotel where Anthony's wife works, where we as an audience quickly learn that he's also a father. The favour that his wife asked is that it's his turn to raise the son, at least allow her to have a little break and clear her head and become a father for once in his life. Bernadette and Adam learn about this and of course are left in shock about all the secrets that Anthony has been keeping from them. But the show must go on. Anthony is quite adamant to make sure his son doesn't know that he is a drag queen and asks that he is put to bed before the show begins. But of course, going against every single thing that he asked for, his son attends the show anyway and quickly makes Adam pass out on stage. His son accepts and is very open to what his dad does for a living, and is really into the idea of his dad and mum just being happy as the people they choose to be and with the people they choose to be with. And with this new confidence and acceptance, Anthony, Adam and Bernadette climbs King Canyon in full drag and live happily ever after and all their dreams come true. The end. Of course that's not the end, there's a lot more to it. But this fake ending here is why Priscilla Queen of the Desert is so important to me. It isn't about getting the gold and riding into the sunset and living happily ever after. Priscilla's story is one of becoming, growing and accepting the fact that life just goes on. While all three of them stand on top of that mountain, the movie could have easily cut to black and beautifully finished there and then. But instead, the three girls all ask, well, what next? But before we reveal the answer of what next, let's go through our characters and let's look at what this film does so bloody well. Despite Anthony being our main focus and drive for the story, I personally believe that Adam sees the most growth and the most important growth to me as a younger person. As I mentioned earlier, Adam is someone who is up and coming in the drag scene and is the youngest out of the three on the bus. Because of that, he's the loudest and also the most bombastic. For an example, Adam challenges Anthony to a snap competition, and if Anthony was to lose, then he would, well, have to do this. They must walk around the next town in full drag, the most ridiculous, loudest outfits they could choose, and Adam could just be laughing it off and embarrassing all three of them there and then. Adam's whole character is summed up by one sentence that he says himself.
I was only having a bit of fun.
Fun? What else did you do for amusement? Slam your fingers in car doors. What's the point?
I like seeing people get hot-headed, okay? It gives me a kick.
Is it true when you were born the doctor turned around and slapped your mother?
And with that motto, Adam's character is set up to be nothing but trouble for the queens. He knows for a fact that he shouldn't ever mention Bernadette's dead name. Anyway, Adam is a massive cunt, decides to call Bernadette by her birth name, Ralph, and does this of course in a public bar in front of people where she had just received some transphobic abuse from another woman. Of course, Adam very quickly learns that he messed up big time and that Bernadette batters the fuck out of him in a hotel room. But overall, because of Adam's choices to make them dress up in embarrassing drag and of course dead naming Bernadette there and then, their bus is then vandalised and covered in homophobic slurs. It's this lack of respect and care that also gets Adam in trouble in Cooper PD. Despite being advised by everybody on the bus to just lay low for the night, Adam goes against everybody's will and instead decides to take some drugs, sneak out in full drag and hit on some minors who are having a few drinks and get together during the middle of the night. Adam's idiotic and bombastic nature causes him to start hitting on these minors and then very quickly learns that they're very aggressive against him. And it's only because Bernadette and Anthony saw him running while still egging on these men while they're eating that they were able to stop him from being raped or much worse. After all this, Adam is left with a fractured jaw and mentally traumatized by the event. And of course, Bernadette comes to his aid and teaches him that it should make him stronger and learn from his actions and mistakes. And also learn that getting people fired up can have truly dire consequences for his life, and not everybody will just laugh it off as a joke. And let's go back to that main need and motivation he has for people's actions against him and the fact he just loves seeing the world burn. Adam knew from the moment that he took those drugs that those men would want to hurt him and that they wouldn't accept his ways, but he just wanted to egg them on. It's the same way that he knew he could just keep pushing against Bernadette, but the only way to really break down the walls is by doing the ultimate insult to a trans person and dead naming her there and then in a pub. So he thought it would be a good idea when meeting Anthony's son for the first time, Ben, that he would just out him there and then and create conflict between Ben and Anthony and see what happens. but it doesn't go the way that he planned. You can see on his face and the expression that Guy Pearce gives off that he knows that he's hoping for Ben to quickly lash out and panic and even start an argument possibly with his father. But then Ben very quickly says that he knows it all and he hopes that his dad has a boyfriend when he gets back and thinks it's super cool that he is a drag queen. In this moment, Adam is left in pure shock. Not only does this kid understand and accept that they are who they are and is happy for his father to be who he is, he's received something that he didn't expect. Adam reaches out for an aggressive reaction because he knows there could be controversy with someone in the LGBT in 1995 and loves to see the aggressive reactions that people often have when making these sort of jokes or being this sort of person. Instead of someone pushing back and being aggressive, Ben openly respects and shows that there is hope for him and hope for people in the future to understand these queens and understand what it's like to be stuck in the closet and in a world that can be often so aggressive towards them. Adam is left in awe and accepts that maybe everyone isn't always as aggressive as he expects. And this is what brings me to our main lead, Anthony. He has the most conflict with their identity and personal status and sexuality and what it means to be a father, and even if it's possible for someone to be a dad and a drag queen at the same time. Anthony, as soon as he receives the phone call from his wife, has a vivid memory of him being in full drag while waiting for his son to be born. Whether or not this is actually how it happened or just him exaggerating the worst fears of being an overtop drag queen and a father, who's to say. Throughout the runtime though, Anthony is in doubt of his sexuality and future in the business, as demonstrated by this scene.
We've only recently discovered young Anthony here bats for both teams.
I do not.
Oh, so we're straight?
No.
Oh, we're not. So we're a donut puncher after all.
No.
Then what the hell are we?
I don't fucking know.
His personal journey in the whole movie is just about accepting who he is, and when he's son around he even tries to be a little bit more masculine by wearing a Stetson and dressing up as a cowboy and wearing the blandest outfit he wears throughout the whole movie's runtime. The movie shows us that he's constantly in his own world and mind, overthinking what his son will think of him, always worrying and often keeping it a secret from those who are closest from him. Of course, over time he tells his secrets and hopes for the support of his friends, which they of course willingly do, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have his own worries and is worried about what Ben will think of him as a father. There is a scene later on where they're about to climb the King's Canyon where Anthony says that he doesn't want to climb the mountain in drag with Adam and Bernadette. In this scene he is talking to his son and just hoping that he can sort of have a conversation with him as a mano to mano rather than a dad and a son, trying to be over manly, trying to spit despite that's not being in his personality at all. Ben then inquires about him having a boyfriend and he very quickly learns, much like Adam, that Ben is very accepting and loves the fact they are who they are, and shows him that Anthony is able to be himself and is proud of him and the father that he is. He learns no matter the size of your heels that Mitzi the Magnificent can be the greatest father figure a kid could ask for. But there is a different layer underneath this that is a theme throughout the whole film. I can understand as a father why he's worried about his son following in his influence. This film from the moment it starts demonstrates that it isn't always a kind place and isn't accepting of people in the community like drag queens, gay people or transgender people. Anthony's first scene out of drag is pouring with rain and surrounded by aggressive people. And he knows that people in the LGBT community face hardships and unfortunately encounter horrible and aggressive people, demonstrated like the man in Cooper PD or the woman in the pub. And when their bus is vandalised and they're sitting there in silence, Anthony is the only person to say one line.
No matter how tough I think I'm getting, it still hurts.
Anthony has gone through a lot and so have all the other queens, and they don't want that grief to be reflected on to his son, and he doesn't want his son to have to go through that life and pretend to be someone who he isn't just to try and stay out of being hurt. And instead of being that flamboyant drag queen he is known for, he instead tries to be a manly man in a cowboy outfit. But Ben knows that his dad is an amazing entertainer and is the perfect inspiration for him, allowing Anthony to let go of all his worries and fear and turn it into strength that he's been searching for, and the same strength that Bernadette carries from start to finish. Bernadette is the glue that holds this bitchy crew together. She is someone who has seen it all and taken so much shit from the likes of Adam and the homophobic pricks that are scattered throughout this film's runtime. But despite how she is treated by Adam, she is still the one there to hold him after the traumatic event in Cooper PD. She's the only one to stare the woman in the face when confronted in the pub and stands up for her and all the other queens. And even later in this scene shares a drink with the same homophobic person just to prove a point that she is stronger than all of them in the pub. And of course she is also the one willing to take the steps outside of the bus and just walk out in the outback to try and get help. But what is Bernadette's personal journey besides strength? When Anthony is putting together these groups of fabulous Avengers, we learn that Bernadette's boyfriend or possible husband had just passed away. And knowing that she lost the only person that she truly loved in Sydney, she of course accepts Anthony's offer of going on the road trip. It's this grief and loss that really puts Bernadette on her personal journey. She mentions throughout this movie how important it is as a transgender woman to find someone who loves her for who she is. She of course mentions that maybe Trumpet, who was her boyfriend slash possibly husband, loved her because there's something about knowing that your wife used to be a man and that there was this transgender specialty that came with that, but she still accepted the love that she got from her husband. And maybe that's why she finds it important to be around Adam and Anthony, because they also love her for who she is, and she's willing to be in a place where she feels comfortable and surrounded by the people who care for her. And in this film, she's constantly burdened by this worry of knowing if she would ever find anyone who would once love her like her boyfriend and find that sort of acceptance ever again. And much like Adam and Anthony being surprised by the love and hope that Ben gave to them, so was Bernadette, but not by Ben, but instead by Bob. Bob is your everyday blokey mechanic, but also the nicest guy you could meet out in the desert. Despite having a slow learning curve to calling them three blokes and then learning to accept their pronouns and such, Bob overall is the nicest person they could meet on their journey and becomes a great companion to these three queens. Bob of course suffers from his own personal journey, but something that's not as quite as dramatic as the main leads. He met his wife in the Philippines and very quickly learned that she has a special trick on which she fires ping pong balls out of her... yeah. After getting sick of his wife embarrassing herself in front of the whole town just to entertain them, she leaves him and therefore he is left alone. But this doesn't stop Bob from being such a sweetheart, and of course accepts the offer of joining the queens on their journey to the hotel in Alice Springs, and of course so they can stick around and fix the bus. And while on this journey, Bob never once disrespects Bernadette and actually begins to fall in love with her honesty and strength. And it's this kindness that someone like Bob shows that leaves Bernadette also falling in love with him too. She says how important it is to finally meet a gentleman like him and actually seeing her as the woman that she is, and not just because it's some sort of transsexual kink as she puts it. Bernadette finds comfort knowing that she's going to be loved again and going to be loved by someone like Bob. And when all three of these queens climb King's Canyon, we can see on Bernadette's face that she's the only one truly there being happy and being free in the moment, looking around and embracing the environments and having an understanding that life will be okay and life will go on. And it's these three stories that makes this film one of the most important LGBT films of all time. The arcs of all three of these characters brings it all together: hope, acceptance and love. All three of these characters go through trials and pain, and all are able at the end to stand holding hands on top of that mountain and prove to someone young like me, for the first time seeing people who identify and who went through similar experiences as me, that life isn't as bad as it seems. We all go through hell, but eventually we can all stand on top of it all and just say, what's next? And I think there's something quite beautiful about this film's take on the realism of the world. It could have ended, like I said, there and then on top of the mountain and cut to black, but instead it brings you straight back down and we learn a little bit more about these characters. We learn that they aren't living happily ever after, but instead they decide that they want to go back home and they actually truly miss Sydney and that little pub that this film opens up on. So Adam, Anthony and his son Ben all return back to Sydney, while Bernadette and Bob live in the hotel and look after it while Anthony's wife is having a break. It's this little moment of them accepting who they are and accepting what they want to do with their lives that makes this film feel so beautiful and really ties it up in a nice little bow and says that life will go on and you can choose and be whoever you want to be and be surrounded by the people you want to be with, This film teaches that life is full of ups and downs, and learning about yourself and supporting those around you as much as they support you on their own journeys is amazing and is so important to us as people. Sure, life can be a drag, but I really wouldn't want to miss it for a second.